was trying to mute it because like I was hitting the button and it wasn't muting. So this is that technology day that wants to make sure we're all bright and bubbly and paying attention.
Well, we're doing the best we can.
Going with the flow.
Going with the flow, don't you know? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We can, now that we've got our wheels turning all in the same direction. So we are here today with Lois Hollis, and we'll give Lois her proper introductions with her bio in a moment, but it's Lois's birthday. I want to say happy birthday, Lois. Thank you so much for being with us on your birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. I love
And
it.
yeah, it's great to see you. It's just great to connect with you. I'm really happy you're here with us. And of course, as you've seen, our lovely Linda Coulter-Burge, psychic and conscious business coach, she is making the ship fly today. So thank you so much, Linda, for juggling so much and making it work.
I am loving this, and it's bringing back the tech in me that I thought was never there for a long time since walking away from it. And it's like, so there's this part of me, no, I said no to this a long time ago, but
Can't escape it. And you still got it. You're doing great. You're doing great. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna hop in and I'm gonna read you Lois's bio so you guys all have a sense of her. Because even though she's been doing this for a while, she's still new to the scene in many ways. So Lois Hollis, RN, BSN, Reverend, is a shame, guilt educator, counselor, filmmaker. Today, she will shift our opinion on one of the most taboo subjects, shame and guilt. For the past 15 years, she has been sharing unknown information about shame and guilt that helps us release these obstacles and live our greatness. Emotional and physical pain were Lois's life until she uncovered shame. She came to learn that the solution to her anger, depression, 30 years of migraines, rage, fears, pain, etc., was in recognizing and releasing shame. Lois, as a trailblazer, created a way to health that she shares with us today. Lois is the author of 3 books and a short film. Her newest book, Now is the Time, contains her light language readings that enhance our spiritual growth by dissolving resistant mental, emotional patterns. Her latest film, I'm Good, Exposing Guilt and Shame, will be produced in January 2021. So that is remarkable and amazing. And so, Lois, do you want to tell people, it's your birthday, do you want to share with them how old you are today or how young you are today?
I am 77 years on this earth at this time.
At this time. And it's mind-blowing because you're so vibrant, you're so active, you're so alive. And in the world, we see so much people just start to give up and their bodies start to shut down. And a lot of that is these emotional patterns that they're holding that are overriding their health. It's overriding their mental capacity. And it's leading them to, exiting the planet because everything is shutting down. But you had a pivotal point, Lois, where something broke, something changed. And I was wondering if you could kind of unpack that a little bit, that moment of because you were in all this pain, as you were saying, and we can get into those details as well. But I'm curious about what was that moment where you're like, wait, this is a bunch of BS. I don't have to do this to myself anymore. What did that moment look like?
That was the moment when I lived in Sedona. Well, I moved to Sedona because I was found a chiropractor healer who could help me heal from my damaged heart, my broken jaw, my broken neck, my many brain traumas, scoliosis, etc., many problems, plus the 30 years of migraines. So I was also looking at ways to heal because you have to do the emotional work. And someone said to me, Lois, how do you deal with shame? And I went, that's an interesting word. Like it never happened. Like I never thought about it before. Here I am, 40 years old, like nobody ever mentioned shame because I'll tell you a quote, the greatest trick that shame and guilt ever pulled was to convince the world it didn't exist.
Yeah.
Okay.
That it's normal. That
It's
just,
normal.
yeah.
We don't even mention it. Okay, they do a little bit now because of the virus thingy, but essentially they did. I went, that's an interesting word. I went to the library. We didn't have internet then, okay? So I went to the library, and Bradshaw was the forerunner. And he said, shame is the sickness of the soul. And then I start reading different articles, and then all of a sudden I had the awakening, and I've had spiritual experiences before, so it wasn't unusual for me to get information that was not in the books.
Okay.
And oh my God, I was dancing. I'm a tap dancer too. So I was like so excited. I don't have to go to therapy for anxiety. I don't have to go to therapy for anger. I don't have to deal with all this pain in my head. Of course, I have to heal physically as well too, but I don't have to do all these things. I just have to get rid of shame and guilt. Wow, I was so excited. I was like the happiest person in the world because I had a way out of my whole life being told I'm no good, I'm dyslexic, I can't do this, I can't do that, even though I achieved so much. I mean, I created the first hemodialysis unit in the country in the 60s in Pennsylvania. So I've made many, and open heart surgery, I helped with that development as well. So I have many first, but I still felt not good enough. And you all understand that. It doesn't matter how many stars you get. It's how you feel inside. So yeah. So anyway, I start working with that and also working with my clients that I've been working with. And I learned that shame and guilt are the same. Shame works in the unconscious mind and guilt works in the conscious mind.
Okay.
Now that's really important to understand because there's a lot of people that say shame is no good, but guilt is good. We need guilt to be moral. And I say, no, there's no good poison. Okay. So I would like to express that there is love energy that comes into us, and we can feel that. We joy and happiness and all sorts of wonderful empowerment we can feel. And then on the other side, we have shame, guilt energy coming into us. Shame, guilt energy, not shame energy, not guilt. Shame, guilt energy.
Okay. Well, I want to unpack that a little bit because that's the point I really want to make finesse, because I think it also depends on how you define shame and guilt. Like Brene Brown, she's a well-known researcher on shame, guilt, vulnerability, and she's done a lot of work. And her thing about shame is I am a bad person. Guilt is I've done something bad. Like shame is there's something wrong with me. Guilt is, oh, I did something wrong. So guilt is a signal that says, oh, I stepped on your toes. Oh, I did something that was not appropriate. That was against my value system. Guilt shows up when we do something that's against our value system and we feel bad because you're acting out of alignment with your values, versus shame, which is like, you could never do anything right to begin with. And that's the difference that she makes. And that makes sense to me, but you may define it differently.
Well, that is correct. There's nothing wrong with that definition. I'm going deeper.
Okay.
That she's right. Exactly. That's very true. But I go deeper into what is it? How does it act on me? And I say it's not an emotion, it's an energy that comes into us. Now, why do we have to put it shame and guilt? We do that because our culture is laid out that way. And I'm a nurse, so I can explain. And forgive me if there's medical people on the line because it's very simplistic. If you have a bacteria or virus in your brain, they call it meningitis. If you have the same bacteria virus in your lungs, they call it pneumonia. If you have the same bacteria virus in your liver, they call it hepatitis. So what I'm saying to you is that the way our culture labels things, it's a different name because it's in a different location, even though it's the same bacteria.
Mm. So you're saying at the root element, guilt and shame are the same. The expression is different, but it's the same essential disconnect.
Exactly. It
Okay.
it is the same root, like a root,
Root.
and it has a guilt leaf and a shame leaf, but it's the same. I don't know a word for it because the only thing I can say is shame guilt. That would make people very confused if I give it another name. But Brene Brown's right. I'm just saying it's deeper than that. And the fact that we separate it makes people separate it and not understand that it's one thing and we can get rid of it.
So yeah, because it starts to get very complex when you go that deep, because it's what I'm picking up as we tune into this is that it's this point of disconnect, and that is the core issue. And just like, a bacteria or a virus that is dangerous to us versus the ones that are in our biome and that are part of our system that are fine, but the ones that are behaving in such a way that are destructive, there's this core invasion of disconnection, if we can call it that. And it can express itself as guilt, where it's like, I shouldn't have said that to Lois. That was really rude. I'm going to apologize to Lois because that's against my value system. I don't talk to people like that. I'm sorry, Lois. Can you forgive me for that? And that's guilt kind of, it's like I'm choosing to use that guilt flag as a moment to reconnect, versus shame, which is like, God, I'm a horrible person. I can't believe I said that to Lois. I'm terrible. And that is the shame, which is already what I'm picking up from what you're saying, and what I'm tuning into is that shame is that's when it becomes toxic, where this root of disconnection, shame becomes this toxic thing where it is invasive, and it becomes corrosive, and it becomes our identity. Versus guilt, we can either beat ourselves with guilt and it turns into shame, or guilt can be a signal like, own what you did, forgive yourself, move on. What do you say about that?
Guilt, and you're perfect for this because I am helping people not to use guilt as a medium of doing the right thing. Okay. I'm doing this podcast not because I'd feel guilty if I didn't do it. I'm doing it because I'm evolving. I want to help humanity. I'm doing it for a higher purpose. Let's say someone asks me to help them move. I'm going, oh, if I don't help them, I'll feel so guilty. No, I'm helping them because it's the right thing to do. Don't use guilt at all in your life. Use it to have it the right thing to do. If you say something wrong, say, well, I think I want to apologize because that wasn't the right thing to do.
Okay.
Don't use guilt in your vocabulary. You can never get rid of guilt. Okay, you can never get rid of guilt. And everybody understands that one because they've been trying to get rid of guilt forever. You can only get rid of guilt when you get rid of the shame that's producing the guilt.
Okay.
That is true.
So can I ask a question for clarification about personal experience?
Mm-hmm.
I still remember as a child, I had a best friend, and we lived in the country, so there weren't a lot of friends to have. Mm-hmm. So kind of the one that I had became my best friend. And so I remember as a child, we played Barbies all the time, but I always kept the best Barbies. I was very selfish. She always got the second-rate crap Barbies. And at one point, she just had enough. And she blew up and said, you never give me the good Barbies. I'm never going to play with you again. And she didn't. She cut me off. And I, at that age as a child, I felt horrible. First, I was angry. Of course, my first reaction was, how dare you? They're my Barbies. And the second one was, oh my gosh, she's right. I didn't treat her well. And
how did that make you feel?
I felt ashamed.
Okay, now
I felt ashamed.
Yeah, you can allow, this is perfect because this is how you release the shame. If you can close your eyes and see yourself as that young child, which you have already done, if you can see the shame as black or a whole, everybody's different. So if you can see the shame, and what is your name?
Linda.
Linda, is Linda the same name as the child in you that you're talking about? Say, hi, Linda.
Do you want me to say it out loud?
Yeah, say it out loud.
Oh,
hi,
okay.
Linda. Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for coming to see me.
I'm sorry?
Thank you so much for coming to see me.
Thank you so much for coming to see me.
I would like to take that shame away from you. Is that okay with you?
I would like to take that shame away from you. Is that okay with you? And I'm going to interject because I think I've done this already.
But you've got to take the shame that she's holding. You're not holding it, she's holding it. So you can help her take it out of her and give it to the universe. So
I think what my process was, and I appreciate that, it would have been a lot easier, but the process I went through was seeing that friend again in our 20s and saying, I just need to tell you I am sorry for that. I was carrying it that whole time. That's when it became shame for me. Was I think my process feels very, it was the guilt and then the shame. Shame was I'm a bad person because I did this to you. And then I said to her, I apologized to her and she said, I don't even remember that. And I had been carrying it that whole time.
But you weren't, the little kid in you was.
Right.
That's
but
why
I think I was carrying it too. I was carrying it through the years because I felt the need to.
She was carrying it. So you are an expression of her.
No,
she said she didn't even remember it.
No. The kid inside of her,
the kid inside of me.
Yeah, is carrying it. So if she can release it, then that's it.
Right. So what happened for me was I felt the need, as soon as I said I apologized to her and that I was sorry that I did that. It's kind of the 12-step program of making amends with someone for something you feel you've done wrong to them. That was my process for releasing it. It wasn't even whether or not she accepted it. I just found it hilarious that she didn't even remember the incident and I'd been carrying it all these years. But it also was a learning tool for me of, do I want to treat people selfishly in the future? And so it was kind of a learning moment for me as a child of how I wanted to be, because it didn't feel right that I was that person. So for me, it was more of an alignment of my higher self and my higher good, of where I had deviated from that and it didn't feel right. And when I brought myself back into alignment, and if I feel those same inclinations and it's like, that feels the same as that. No, I'm choosing not to do that. I'm choosing to do what's in alignment with me.
Okay, and you can still do this, help her release the shame. What I want to make known is that we are good. We didn't do anything wrong. Shame and guilt has turned our emotions from the positive to the negative. And that little kid inside of you is still carrying it, but she doesn't know how to release it. So everyone needs to reparent themselves. That's just the way it is. So you as a mother are helping her release it, taking her out of her, because it doesn't belong to us. Shame, guilt doesn't belong to us. It is not human. It doesn't belong to us, serves us no good purpose. And we can get rid of it and give it to the universe for recycling.
So my first word is, that's the definition of a sociopath.
Is what?
to not have any remorse.
Not having remorse, not having
You
guilt,
don't,
not
well,
having anything.
you don't have to have guilt. You just have to live like you said. It is in my best interest to help other people, to share. That's what you need to have, not the guilt. The problem with sociopaths is that they are so much shame that their brain, their nerves have been distorted to such a degree that they don't even have the ability to think other than the shaming. They have total shame in their brain. I mean, I know that's not very philosophical or technical, but they are overwhelmed. They say, oh, they don't even feel any shame. They have so much shame that they can't feel shame. Did you ever, if you were in a dark room and you wore black clothes, could you see it? You couldn't see
Right.
your black clothes because
So,
you're so much in black. That's how a sociopath's mind is. It's totally full of shame. So they can't feel shame because there are shame.
so I think there's this point that we're trying to finesse here is that Lois is saying that you can, if I've done something to hurt Linda's feelings, for example, we had a conversation, I said something that I thought was funny, but it really hit Linda the wrong way. Or I just, was not thinking it, I just wasn't thinking about her in a way that was useful, and whatever. It created a disruption between the two of us. I feel like there's that part that's like, okay, well, I want to be able to say, hey, Linda, I did that and I apologize. Will you forgive me? And I feel like this is the piece what we're trying to finesse, is that I don't have to feel, it's okay for me to be able to say that, have the regret, but I don't have to be like stuck in a lower emotion about it. Be like, oh, I did do that. Yep, I did that. Okay, I can forgive myself because I'm human. I'd forgive anybody else. I can forgive myself, and then I'm still going to present it to Linda and be like,
Of course.
Linda, I want to share this with you. I did that. I own that, and I regret it, and I apologize. But I'm not beating myself up in that moment. Is that the difference that you're trying
Yes.
to?
And I have a word for that. I taught it to my grandchildren when they do something like, oh, they spilt the milk or they spilled the cereal on the floor. They didn't commit a, people say, oh, how terrible. No, no. They did a da. They did a da.
Da.
A da. I did a da. And then they went home to see their mom and my daughters, and they said, hey, Mom, I did a da. I spilt the French fries on the floor when we were eating. It was a da. He didn't feel guilty. He didn't feel remorse. I did a da. Now, if you can come with a better word, fine. But that's how I live, because I have an email autoresponder. Okay, I'm new to tech, so I'm very proud of what I did. I got so busy, I had to shift that to someone else who knew less than I did. I didn't know that. Anyway, it got messed up. I finally found out it made a mistake. I got another person. It's okay now. You can do my autoresponder email. I sent an email blast out yesterday, and it was entitled Oops, OOPS, Oops. And it was a guy with Christian marks all over him. And I explained that my email was realigned and I didn't know it, but now I know it. And thank you for your patience. And if you ever have any inconsistencies in my email or website, please get in touch with me. Thank you so much. But I called it Oops.
Yeah, you didn't have you're saying you just didn't have any emotional weight to it. You let it go. That's what I'm like seeing what you're doing. It's a retraining of the brain. And I know what Linda's saying, like there's a concern like of, yeah, if people who don't feel any remorse for what they've done, those are the people who are sociopaths. That's where
That's a whole nother story.
Right. And so, but I just kind of, because I want to like make it accessible for people, right? That's the whole goal. And so what I'm hearing you say, Lois, about that, and Linda, feel free to hop in with more reflection on that, because I know I can just see you in there with stuff to say. I see it turning. That people who are sociopathic, are so and this is it is a conversation for another time, but I kind of want to put a period on it so we can move past it, is that people who are sociopathic are so inladen with shame that they're not aware of it. They're so deep in it, they don't see. It's like the fish that can't see the water.
Exactly.
The fish who can't see the water because they're swimming in it. That's how, when you're that deep into it in shame, you don't see it because it's part of your environment. I think we all have that to some degree because we're all taught to feel shame and guilt. But you're saying sociopaths have it to a degree where it's just they can't see it because it's everything. And so they react in such a way where they don't feel anything because their feelings are overwhelmed with shame and guilt. And that's what you're trying to get to. This is the whole crux of it, is that you're trying to say guilt, this energy that is called shame and expresses itself also as guilt, is alien to us in a way.
Yes, perfect. Okay. You're very smart. Very well put. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, that's a conversation I want to have. I want to hear about how it's alien to us, because this impacts your light language. This impacts how light can't get into our light body if we're not releasing guilt and shame. So this is the juicy stuff.
Oh yeah, that's a whole, we may have to do another one on that, because that is a whole concept that's beautiful for you. But anyway, I need to help people evolve. Shame and guilt is the most dangerous energy to our evolution. We all try to evolve, you and your particular genre, and me too. And we do meditation, we do light things, and so forth and so on. If we just do shame and guilt release, we automatically evolve, because that's what's holding us down.
Okay.
That's how powerful it is. And that's why I was so excited that you invited me to speak in your genre, because we need this more than others. Also, people like you, like me, like your particular genre, people in the light category are more sensitive to shame, guilt. You get it more than the other guy.
Yes.
And I go, God, really? That's really not fair.
Yes. And I think part of that is because being empathic, if someone is angry, picking that anger up, and I can choose to accept it or say that is their response to what's happening, and not own their response to what's happening, and know that, have I done something to offend and legitimately done something that needs amends? Or, is that my stuff, their stuff, my stuff, their stuff? I love that. For me, that was how I had to deal with other people's shit.
Okay. To answer that, you don't deal with other people's shame. You have to learn, that boundaries. You cannot accept it, but you have to know what shame guilt is before you don't know what to accept. So anyway, there's another reason that was given to me why light people like you, like me, like all of us, shame guilt energy, okay? Shame guilt energy has an affinity for the light body. So it uses the light body to enter our being. So the people that have the larger chakra, larger energy coming in, are susceptible to more shame and guilt. Not because you're bad, it's just because they feed off the light energy.
Okay, see, this loops into what we were saying, where I want to call shame is an alien from outer space. Like that's our next talk, in terms of it being something alien to our soul, alien to our being. And when you talked about it, because I met you via Karen Swain's show, because I love Karen. She's been a mentor of me, and she's what turned me on to you. And I can empathically feel what you're saying is true. Like, I can psychically pick up what you're saying. And that's why it caused me so much excitement. And I knew I needed to get you on the show, was because there's something about our, because we are light beings and we're more connected to the fact that we're light beings, it puts us into this more vulnerable state because we're more receptive, period. But when we're more receptive, with that has to come the discernment of not being receptive to the shame guilt energy, because it's part and parcel that we're so receptive. Shame guilt, this energy goes, oh, well, great, I can fit right in and I can make my home inside of you. That's what I'm picking up empathically.
Exactly. And thank you for receiving that. Many people are not that awareness to receive that information. And this is the first time I spoke about this in 25 podcasts. So thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
This is a safe space for it.
And this came straight from spirit. Lois did not read this, or this came from spirit. They had to tell me this. I went, okay, I get it. So now that's why when you say the definitions of shame is, I'm bad, and guilt is I did something bad, that's interesting. But it doesn't help us know what shame guilt really is. And if we know what it really is, we have a different understanding of never using it.
We have a different relationship to it because we understand it's alien to our being. It's a foreign substance to us.
Yes. Yes.
To who we are as expressions of divine creation, the divine source.
Yes. And it's, however, shame guilt has a defect. Ooh. Its defect is exposure.
Yes. Yes. Brene says the same thing. It can't survive in light.
Exposure. So when I was talking to you about the little kid inside of you that was carrying the shame, I actually saw her with this black thing right here. So once we saw her, you see her, the black shame there, it can be gotten rid of rather than going through the forgiveness with someone else. Okay, that's very nice and very good, but it's not necessary because it makes you feel guilty that you did something wrong. No, you just had shame guilt come into you. You didn't do anything wrong. I mean, yes, you want to talk well with people. You don't want to cause them to suffer. That's a higher state of being, but it's coming from a higher state of being, not from a guilt complex.
So let's bookmark this here, or let's expand this, zoom in for a second, because I want to tune into this moment with Linda and the other little girl, and Linda's moment of saying, oh, yeah, that wasn't very nice of me. That was kind of mean of me. It was kind of rude of me. And so that awareness of that behavior, there's a moment there where being a light being, especially because Linda is such a light being, she's an amazing light being, that guilt goes, haha, yeah, see you, or shame goes, oh, see, yep, you did that. You should feel bad. And it nestled in. Another option in a place from awareness would have been like, yeah, that was not a great thing to do. That was a da. That was just a silly thing to have done. And I know I don't need to do that going forward. And I can tell that other little girl, that was a da. And
it was a da.
And it's a different relationship. Yeah. But because Linda was so open to light, it was like, see what you did. You can never blah, blah, blah. And like that story goes on. Does that resonate?
It resonates, but also she needs to see the blackness in the little girl, little Linda, and take it out of her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I do in my sessions. We find the shame, guilt, we see it, we get rid of it. That's it. That's all there is. There ain't no more. Because it's the because that's all there is.
Right.
Shame guilt causes our intuition emotion to turn to anxiety. It turns all positive emotions into negative ones. Shame guilt turns our passion into anger.
This is good stuff.
That distorts it, yeah.
Because, go ahead.
Shame guilt causes compassion to be depression.
Okay.
So we have compassion, we have intuition, we have all these wonderful things. But shame guilt comes in and goes, we're going to turn it. We're going to turn it. That's it. That's the story.
It distorts the energy body, and the energy body contains emotions because emotions are part of our natural. We have an emotional body.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me just kind of get this out there. We have an emotional body. We have an energy body. Our emotional body is connected into our energy body or our light body. And as soon as there's a distortion with this shame from outer space, as we'll call it, it turns in on itself and it can't take its true form. So then it starts to express itself in other ways. Is that fair?
That's fair. You're good.
And I want to take it one step further because we have the physical body in that. And I know through my healing process that working with Joan King, who is scientist, ex-nun, who studied how emotions are stored in cells, releasing that from the cells, the physical body. That's when you go to a massage therapist and suddenly you're bawling and you don't understand why. Well, you're releasing the chemicals of those emotions from the cellular level. And so I understand why you would have, Lois, people with feeling that blackness within a body, those emotions stored energetically and at the cellular level. And releasing that, how powerful that could be for some. Yeah, absolutely. Because somewhere, if it's in that child, that's still stored at a physical level within me. And so you are releasing that at all those levels.
At the core.
At the core, right, to be able to move that. And I absolutely agree with the, being empathic. I definitely have to put barriers up when I'm in close contact with someone who feels a lot of shame and guilt, because if I allow myself to go too far into compassion with that and connect to that, I'm a puddle on the floor. It just goes like that, and it's just boom, and I am a puddle on the floor. So
you're very smart and you understand, and this can give you even a bigger understanding of shame and guilt. Shame, guilt is not mine to own or to give.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other part, what you think of me is none of my business. It comes down also to judgment, judging from others and judging from ourselves. And that is not a higher light.
Exactly. All negative emotions come from shame, guilt. Like I said, how they turn our positive to negative. And there's a lot of information now about, how to be happy. We need to be joyous. We need to be positive. And I totally agree with that. But if you would get rid of the shame, guilt, you would automatically be beautiful and lovely and intuitive. And not that we can't make that more, but people don't bring the shame and guilt in. And that is the main dangerous factor within humanity. And it's the reason we have not evolved as a species, because we have evolved.
We've evolved to some degree, but what I'm really hearing in this is that when the alien shame comes in, it distorts our true form. And we work so hard over here, we work so hard over there to get ourselves into a place where we're happy and connected, and we do all this stuff. But the core thing we aren't releasing is the shame, and the core thing of the shame is causing the distortion. Once the shame is released, the distortion leaves, and coming into this place of feeling aligned and in tune and in alignment with our oneness is a natural consequence. We don't have to work at it anymore because we've released the genie from the bottle. The shame was the cork holding the genie inside the bottle. Once we release the shame, we find our true form and our magical expression. How about that?
That's the big da.
The big da. The big da. The big oops. The big oops.
Yeah, the big da. Also, we work today with releasing one aspect, one event of shame. Now, that doesn't release all the shame you received in your life. So anytime you have an experience, instead of like, oh, don't talk about it, because that's what they say, you can't talk to the inner critic and all that. We got to make friends with the inner critic, because that's part of us. That's another story. But we need to find more shame that we have gathered through our lifetime. Now, the interesting thing about what we did today with Linda, by releasing that shame, and never say my shame or my guilt, never, ever, ever, ever own it, right? Because we help our ancestors, because they had the generational shame. We all know shame is generational, but nobody tells us how to get rid of it. You, because you got the core of it, helped your mother, your father, your grandmother. After that realization came to me, after I helped many people, my mom and my aunties came to me from another dimension, and they cried in happiness because I released them as well.
It's huge.
That would be wonderful. So we joked that my mom was a Reformed Catholic, but she wasn't really that Reformed because she carried the guilt forward. And I remember as a child constantly hearing her say, shame on him, shame on you, and to the TV, shame on them. Everything was, and it was like and I remember thinking, that's like a curse.
It is. Well,
that's
yeah.
like it was like, wow. And as a child, I looked at that and thought, oh, it didn't feel good when I heard her saying that.
Linda, I think that is so right. The shame on you, you're saying that it's a curse. It's like this energetic extension of the shame energy and putting it, attempting to put it in or on somebody else. I can feel that.
Yeah. And you hear people say, oh, that's such a shame they did that. Oh, no, it's sad. It's unfortunate that it's raining today and we can't have our barbecue. It's not a shame. You used to be ashamed of yourself. No, you need to look at something, but don't say, you would never put shame on anybody, and ourselves as well.
And we do it to our pets.
Oh, I don't have a pet, so.
The dog will make an accident. Shame on you.
He did a da. He did a da.
Right? So if anyone can take anything from this, the second that finger goes out for shaming, for whether it's a pet or a person or yourself, what other words can I use and what other energy can I have than that? And right there, have that be that indicator to stop, whether it's internal to yourself or external to someone else. And nip it and say, what other words can I use? What other energy can I have than shame?
Yeah.
And through that action, just us shifting that within ourselves and bringing it to the conscious level and changing the language behind it.
It's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah. I do feel like, Lois, at some point, whether it's you need to write a book on the theme of shame is an alien from outer space, because I think that your discovery of it being its own distorted consciousness, and it has an intention, and it comes in with an intention to thrive like a virus, like a negative virus in other people. I think that is, I think there's a lot of spiritual people who that sort of language will translate to them. I know it's not really mainstream language, but there's a lot of light workers who would be able to hop on that really easily. So I do want to explore that with you at some point. I know it's probably going to be part 2, but I'd love to have you back on. So I want to talk for a moment about the inner critic, because there is a wonderful book that has changed millions of lives. I'm sure it's got to be millions of lives, called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And she talks about the inner critic. and she has, different things that you can do with the inner critic. And your approach of befriending them is different than what I've heard. And I feel like the inner critic, for me, when I tune into the inner critic now, the inner critic is some sort of a gatekeeper. Is that the name gatekeeper comes up for the inner critic, and you've got to sort of get that gatekeeper on your side versus trying to, I mean, like, I want to unemploy the inner critic and be like, nope, when I'm making art, your role, if you have a role, it is never to say something's good or bad, but you're not here to destroy what I'm doing creatively, because that's what the inner critic tends to do. It tends to have that alignment with guilt and shame. You should be ashamed of making that art. It's horrible art. And that seems to be, you talk about it, because you talk about it.
Okay. The inner critic, and some people have two. Okay, that is very interesting too. The inner critic is the shame guilt producer within you. That's his job.
Oh.
His job is to produce shame and guilt.
Okay. I'll write that down.
His job keeps you down. And Joy is right. It keeps you down. You can't be creative. You only rise to a certain level. The Peter principle, once you rise to a level that's higher than what you can do, you fall down. They all talk about breaking the glass ceiling and so forth and so on. The inner critic is there so that you never go beyond your means. That's his job. So you telling him, you can't do this, you can't do that, is not going to work. It makes him more angry and more tight. You cannot say, get away. I don't like you. Whatever you're doing is bad, so forth and so on. It makes him more angry.
So what's the positive role of the inner critic?
Oh, he's wonderful.
Okay.
The inner critic has a name. My inner critic was called King, King. I have a DVD on YouTube and my website that teaches you how to talk to the inner critic.
Okay.
Okay. It's on YouTube, and it's called Out of Discord into Harmony.
Out of discord into harmony.
Into harmony.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the inner critic, when you hear, oh, you can't do that, you're stupid. Why are you doing that? Say, oh, hello there. Thank you so much for coming to see me. And what is your name? You've got to befriend him. And then you say, this can take weeks. Sometimes it takes a day. You never know. Anyway, so I'm talking to you. How do I get in touch with you? I don't say, oh, you're stupid, you're dumb. That's not going to work, is it? You're not going to like me. I'm not going to like you. What do? We fight. I say, right. Thank you. Even though you're not speaking my language, you're part of me. Thank you so much for coming to see me. Thank you. And what is your name? Well, I don't talk to you. You're too stupid. I mean, that's how they talk to you. They talk to you the way they talk to you, but you're talking verbally out rather than inner voice. You're bringing him out to talk to you, with you. Then he'll say, shut up, you're too stupid, bye. So the next day they'll come by and you'll say, oh, hi, how are you? Oh, you still here? I want to talk to you. And why do you want to talk to me? You're stupid. I shut everybody down because you didn't do a good job. I said, what do you mean? I took care of all that noise. Somebody crying, somebody complaining. I shut everything down. Now it's peaceful. Now you want to come and mess it up? Oh no, I'm in charge. Now the only way you can get there is say, oh, would you like to have more power? Oh, the inner critic is interested. I like power. He's the narcissistic part of you, right?
Huh. I didn't know that. So go on.
So you say, oh, I want to tell you. I would say, King, I want to tell you something. That it's the year 2020. It's not the year 2066 when I was a little kid. Nobody ever told me that. I thought you still were a kid, stupid. I said, no, I'm 2020. I'm an adult now. And I'm learning from Lois. People say, I'm learning from Lois how not to use shame and guilt anymore. And I became smarter. But I can't come any more smarter until you let me become smarter. And I know you're after my goodness. So what the king does, the inner critic does, he puts you on probation. Okay, let me see, Linda, if you have shame and guilt coming to you and you can stop it. And if I see you're doing a good job, I'll release my control over you. We'll become partners.
Okay. I feel like there's a lot of nuances there to look at. You're saying that the inner critic is the narcissistic part of ourselves because it thinks it's better than everybody else.
Well, it is because it kept you alive. I mean, when you're 4 years old, don't go in that water, it's too deep, or don't do this. It helped us keep safe until we got smart. We weren't that smart about things, but now we are smarter. And we got so much shame and guilt that we became stupid.
Well, I can, okay. So yeah, I know there's more to pull apart there. I also want to make sure Miss Linda's getting her questions in.
Yeah. No, I keep thinking that I call those gremlins,
the inner critic.
The inner critic. I have personalities with them.
And the more you respect them, the more they grow into who they are. And my inner critic now, which he still calls himself king, goes in the ethers for me and helps me find people to work with. And he's my asset. He evolved. We can't evolve until we evolve within ourselves. When our inner parts evolve, we evolve.
Okay. We needed the inner critic as a kind of a way to keep us alive. It was kind of a protector. It
is a protector.
And then at a certain point, like, for example, this summer, I had this really great reconnection with nature, which is ongoing. But I discovered, I was like, oh, yeah, I had been afraid of nature and being out alone in nature as a child. And there was all this fear and this anxiety. And I was able to break through that. And so now when I had the conversation about being in nature, it's shifted because that part of me that was afraid of me being in danger doesn't have the same role. He's not saying, oh, but that could be cold. Oh, you could freeze to death. Oh, it's more logical. It's more like, well, go that deep, but then go deeper next time into the woods. Do it in graduation points, as opposed to don't do it at all. It's dangerous. It's horrible. You know what I mean? Like, that's a kind of a flimsy analogy, but go ahead.
Everybody has a different relationship with the inner critic.
Okay.
Some people, their inner critic, and some people have two, and a female inner critic is much harder to deal with than a male inner critic. Inner critic is sometimes so strong that they won't talk to you for months. Some inner critics are like yours. They already merged with you and realize it's 2020 and you got some smarts now, even though you didn't really communicate, but on some subconscious level, you did. Everybody's different. The pattern's the same. Make friends, tell them it's the year 2020. I'm not perfect yet, but I see now where shame guilt is, and I am learning how to avoid it. That's it. So he stops putting the shame guilt on you because he needs to evolve. He can't evolve unless you evolve, and you can't evolve unless he evolves. Yeah. So everybody's different. Some people take 6 months. Some people take a month. Some people take a couple weeks. Some people take an easy like you. It all depends. But the point is making friends, telling the inner critic, I'm not a child anymore. It's the year 2020. They don't know that until you tell them.
Okay. Well, that's good. I wouldn't say for myself that I've resolved the inner critic, but I think it's because the thing is, like, it's funny because I went through that book of The Artist's Way so many times. I've led groups in it. And while I was doing it, my creativity would come back online. And then a couple of weeks after completing the course again, like, that shame and that shame would come back in, and it became harder and harder to create. And so
because you didn't speak with him.
well, yeah, I think I didn't have, it's like I had some grappling. I had some grappling with it. I grappled, but it wasn't like it was an evolution, and it's been an evolution. And I think the liberation point is that as soon as I'm feeling shame about what I'm making, or I'm hearing the conversation, in my mind. You don't really know you have to catch it. You have to hear it. You have to slow down and be aware of what you're saying to yourself, or what shame is saying to you in your voice, disguised as you. That you can't do this. You're not worthy. You always mess up, whatever that pattern is that it does. Then to be able to say, oh, that is that's the alien from outer space. Like, that's not even me. That's a conversation going, and that's not me. And you can say to, maybe that's a point where you say to the inner critic, oh, I hear you saying, the shame language. That's weird that you're saying that, because that's not a part of who I am at all. And you start to have a different relationship.
Exactly. And say, why are you got to find his name.
Okay.
You have to call him by his name. It's very important. And they call themselves their name. You don't name them, because that's narcissistic.
Okay.
Say, what is your name? And then say, George, or whatever. I hear George. So, hi, George. Thank you so much for protecting me. How can we make it less shame, guilt? Because I am learning so much more now that you don't have to do that. Now, if you don't become the shame, guilt producer, you can have another job. Ooh, they get so excited.
Okay.
You will get another job. And he says, well, what would that job be? I would say you would have more power, and you can have a vacation. So what would you like to do? Would you like to own the car garage, or would you like to park cars? And he would say, oh, I want to own the garage. I'm powerful. And I said, well, you can own more if you don't keep constantly watching me doing not getting hurt, because I can do that myself now. You go do something else that can help me.
I see. So it's a part of our personality that's looking for a graduation point, but we have to give it the graduation point by owning our own power in that relationship.
And also knowing what is shaming. And that's why I call myself an educator, to teach. You have to learn what shame, guilt is. He's not going to let you go, because he is so loyal to you. Mm-hmm. He is so loyal. He watches you 24/7, not to be hurt by shame and guilt. But his only thing in his toolkit is shame and guilt. That's all he has.
Okay.
He only has that tool.
So it's like a protector.
It is a protector.
But it's like,
because you couldn't protect yourself when you were a kid.
Right. Right. But it's like a protector that's almost stabbing you. It's like it's stabbing you just so you won't move, and so that way you won't get in any further danger. And once you realize, you're like, okay, but stabbing me is also hurting me. So we need to get you a different job. You're stabbing me with shame and guilt. So I'll stay small, and that way I'll stay safe, and I'm protected because I'm small and safe. But actually, that's not serving me anymore. So we're going to change that sword into a magic wand. We're going to give you some real power.
No. You cannot tell him what to do. He has to come up with it himself. That's narcissistic.
Oh, so he has to be the one to say, here's what I want my role to be.
Yes.
He or she.
Yes. And what Linda said, like her mother said, shame. That's how the inner critic was taught. It was taught by our culture. To be that way. He's a Xerox copy of somebody in your family, or your school system, or your government. He is perfect. He's a Xerox copy of the culture you live in. So why are we angry with him when he's only following what the culture told him to do?
Interesting.
He's not a bad guy.
So,
he's a good guy.
So this is bringing up for me an old read that that was really altering for me, which was Debbie Ford's Dark Side of the Light Chasers.
Exactly. She's the one
different language, but very similar. She's just doing it in a different language, but it is finding that gift that has for you. So, one of the things that the examples was, you are so bossy. You are that inner critic. You are so bossy. You are this, you are that. And then looking back and saying, I used that bossiness when someone tried to overwrite my boundaries and it protected me. I'm going to own that bossiness. Yeah. I'm going to use it appropriately, but I'm going to rename that and I'm going to understand that is me holding my sovereign space. And when I impose it on someone else and I'm overriding their space, then I need to look at my behavior. But what I was labeled as, and again, we go back to labels, which we've talked about in past podcasts, we go back and label something as negative and as, that inner critic as always being negative. What are the gifts that are trying to be brought forward?
Exactly. He is so loyal to you. He is your best ally. He is your friend. Who else would protect you 24/7 for 20, 30, 40 years?
Wow, it's such a beautiful healing reframing of the inner critic. I'm just have so much gratitude for that. One of the things is because we've gone on an hour here, but I want to leave people with some bit of we'll have all of your we'll share all of your links and on all of your information. And that one video was called Out of Discord into Harmony. So that's Out of Discord into Harmony by
And it's
Lois
on YouTube.
Hollis.
And it's also on my website, but some people find it easier on YouTube.
On YouTube, okay. So what I want to do is pull back for a second, because like we were saying at the beginning of our conversation, we swim in shame every day and we don't notice it because we think it's normal. We think it's natural. We don't even realize it's there. We're eating it. We're putting it on our face. We don't realize it because it's been so normalized. So how do people start to come out of the sleep? How do they break out of it for a moment and be like, oh my God, that's shame? Like, are there any tools? Is there anything that you can offer as a like, here's your red button you hit. This is when you go, oh, that's shame. I'm going to hit that button. I'm going to be able to catch that more quickly. Is there any tool? Is there any thought? Is there any practice? What would you have to offer for that, Lois?
First of all, your introduction's perfect. Now, as we go along our daily life, we will either feel something or someone would say something to us and it make us feel bad. Like, oh, that didn't make me feel good. We may not label it shame, but in a couple hours you go, oh, I feel so bad about that. I feel so shameful. I feel so guilty. Usually they use guilt. People don't use shame too much. I feel so guilty. Say, okay, this is where the shift is. Okay, shame and guilt over there. It's not of me. I feel it, but it's not of me. What else do I feel? Oh, I feel fucking angry. Excuse me. I feel angry. So I would like them to say, if they have a minute, sometimes you're driving a car or changing a baby's diaper. You don't have time to talk to yourself. So just hold that thought, but shift it from the shame guilt into the anger. And so, hi, anger. Thank you so much for coming to me. What do you want to tell me? And you can write that out. And if you don't have that moment, it's okay. Just shift it from the shame guilt and do the anger or depression or anxiety or fear or whatever you're feeling.
Yep, I'm seeing this. I'm gonna hop in. Forgive me, but because this is a great moment where the initial anger or the initial emotion gets suppressed and distorted by the shame and becomes something else. Like Linda's moment with that little girl, other little girl and the dolls. It's like when she realized that was actually kind of a mean thing to do, or it wasn't a loving thing to do. An option, had shame not shown up, an option would have been like, oh, I'm sad I did that. Or, oh, I'm a little mad at myself that I did that, or it would have been another emotion. It wouldn't have been shame. It would have been like, oh, I'm sad that I made her feel, or I'm sad that she feels she doesn't want to play with me anymore. And she would have felt sadness, which is a normal emotion, versus shame. You're bad for having done that.
Right. And I think also being able to recognize the needs that we have, and that goes back to, you know, the nonviolent communication classes that I've taken. I love that you talk about the emotion, and there's this whole array of emotions that you can look at and say, yes, that's the emotion that I'm actually feeling. And what's the need behind that emotion? Well, I needed to feel safe. I needed to feel supported. I needed to feel significant. I need, you know, what is that need that was behind that? So that you can kind of go back and look at that and unpack it to help internalize what that was for you, that message, that, and also for the other person, being curious for that other person. If there's another person involved, what were their needs that weren't being met? What were the things? Can you imagine what their feelings were, what their needs were that weren't being met? And it's not up to you to meet them, but
Right.
and that's a part of, you know, I think the shame guilt thing is expectations of meeting someone else's needs
Yes, because you're not
translates into
yeah,
that.
exactly. Victimhood, of course.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Anything else that you want to say on that piece of being able to catch the thread? You've caught the thread. Oh, this is shame. This isn't sadness or anger. This is shame. What do I feel beneath the shame? Oh, there's the other emotion. Now I'm going to say, thank you, sadness. Thank you, anger. And pick it up from there, Miss Lois.
And see what they say. Now, sometimes your emotions won't meet you, but don't try to rub them off with that touch and get rid of them and all that stuff. We can't get rid of our emotions. They're crying so hard. Please talk to me. Please talk to me. I'm crying. Don't tell me to deny my feelings.
Right.
That magic touch, I forget the name they use for it. You know, keep touching that place, and the emotion will go away. I don't want my emotions to go away.
We're gaslighting our own emotions.
Exactly. We love without emotions, we have no life. The love, the energy of living is our emotions. So
Ooh.
people that deny their emotions don't do well physically. Our emotions are everything.
The energy of living is our emotions.
Yes. Without our emotions, we don't have our life force.
That is a book right there. The energy of our living, the energy of living is our emotions. It's saying that it's our emotions are part and parcel
To
to,
our life
to
force.
our life force. And if our emotions are tamped down, our life force is tamped down. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a very good interview from Sedona that's on my podcast page in my website. And this is all about the life force and emotions.
Okay.
And that is so important because I think a
Life
lot of
force.
people are taught that there are good emotions and bad emotions. And I remember as a child, don't be angry. Don't, you know, get over it. Don't, right? Don't do this. Be nice. Do this. When all I wanted to do was rage. And that raging was not safe. Anger was not safe. And so as an adult, it was very difficult for me to be around people who were angry. I didn't know how to even cope with it because it had been stuffed. And so when somebody doesn't feel safe to express or share or feel their emotions, they literally, um, and even if that's the case, I was able to realize that and shift that. But if somebody continues through their life not to feel safe in expressing their emotions, it may not matter who they're with if that safety has to come from within.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a damming up of your own life force. and it's going to impact your health. It'll impact your mental capacity. I think that's, what part of what Lois is on your, I was reading your stuff as well, like how it, your physical health, Lois, was awful. Like before you did this release work, like you were in really bad shape.
I was dying. They gave me about a year to live or something.
You were dying.
I was dying. God, 3 doctors told me I'd be dead by 50. And they were right, because my heart was so bad, my lungs were so bad, and I had such serious migraines.
And once you release the shame and guilt out of your body, your whole system started to come back online again, and you started to heal on multiple levels. Is that true?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, you were given a death sentence at 50. You're celebrating your 77th birthday with us, and you are so vibrant. You are so alive. You're challenging yourself to do new things. You have a film coming out in, January 2021. Like, you are the epitome of life on fire after you release shame and guilt.
And everybody that has done my work is the same. Depends on how much work they want to do. It's just the way it is. Also, I believe, this is my opinion, I believe that Alzheimer's, okay, it's nutritional deficiency. We all know that. But on another level, it's from denying your emotions, who after a while, they don't talk anymore. They've been shut up so long, they don't talk anymore. And Alzheimer's is the result.
That is interesting. And the other toxins that we take into our bodies support that shutdown. So they're part of it, but the core issue is you've turned yourself off and your life force stops flowing, and you've turned off your emotions. So therefore you've turned off your life force. Therefore you've started to shut down your cognitive abilities. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes. And that's my opinion.
That's your opinion. Yeah. I can see that line of reasoning. All right. Well, I think this is a good place to wrap it up. Do you have any other questions that you want to give, Miss Linda? Anything else you want to ask, lovely Lois, before?
I think my one last thing is, so if somebody wants to learn more, first read your book, you watch your videos. Is that the directions that you would guide them to? Then if they wanted to work with you?
I would suggest signing up for my email. I have a 500 question. My book's called 500 Questions, One Answer. And I was told, don't give somebody 500 questions right away. You're going to snow them. So I made it 25 questions in 20 segments. So you're going to get an email for quite a while. It teaches people what shame guilt is and how it affects our lives. People have asked me questions and I answer them. And every answer is shame guilt. But you see 500 different ways that shame guilt impacts our lives. And it's an ebook, and they sign up for it, they get the ebook.
That's great. Go ahead.
And then they can look at my book but watch the video, Out of Discord into Harmony. That's very good. And some of the podcasts I've done on my podcast website. And you can always call me. I offer a 15-minute free talk.
Oh, lovely. A 15-minute free talk that you just do. That's so beautiful. What a gift. And I was just seeing that the 500 questions, it's like there's 500 different ways into the experience that it tries to bleed and get in. And it's like, so if you answer each one of those, you're like, that's guilt, shame, that's guilt, shame. It cuts off each 500 entry points, so it no longer has a place to get in.
Right.
That is amazing. Lois, thank you. Bless you for your work. I'm so grateful that you're with us. We will do a part 2, and we'll talk about where this alien shame comes from and what you discovered in that experience 20 plus years ago. But thank you. Have an amazing birthday, and just blessings to you and your work. Thank you.
Blessings, and keep in touch.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, you have a Facebook group too. Here's 2 other quick things. You had, rumor has it you have a Facebook group you're working on and a Zoom group you're working on. Are those things still true?
They're working.
They're working up. You're okay. All right. So people can sign up to your newsletter, and they'll get notified about that.
Yes, that would be the best thing right away.
Okay.
And feel free to join our brand new Facebook group.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I will. Mm-hmm.
Yes, you and all the audience people, I forget this every time. We have a new Facebook group called Third Eye Salon, pretty easy to find. Me and Miss Linda are there, and we have members and we have conversations already flowing and going. Please like, share, subscribe. I know that's a rote thing to say, but if this conversation with Lois impacted you and it turned lights on, and you want to help other people turn lights on and release that stuff, release the shame, realize it's not who they are, it never was who they are, please, share Lois's information. If you don't share this podcast, great, share Lois's information and keep that word going, because we're all looking to liberate each other. We're all looking to, like, my liberation is your liberation, vice versa. We're all one big, beautiful being of God. We're the expression of this divinity. So the more we can help each other liberate ourselves, the more we all come into that oneness and that state of unity and true love. So fair enough.